हमारे ही पास रहेंगे. We'll give you your copies and we'll discuss that. Please welcome sir with a huge round of applause. Please have a seat, sir. Please be seated. A very good afternoon, everyone. So shall I continue? A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to this post-lunch session of the AICTE ATAL Academy sponsored 6-day faculty development program on the theme promoting entrepreneurship and advancing the startup ecosystem within academia, empowering educators, organized by IPS Academy Institute of Business Management and Research Indore, a NAC A++ accredited UGC autonomous institute. Dear participants, we are deeply fortunate to be joined by Dr. G.S. Murthy sir today as our esteemed resource person for this post-lunch session. And let me take the privilege of introducing sir to you all. Dr. G.S. Murthy is a professor at IIT Indore, known for his work in biosciences, sustainable bioprocessing, and environmental systems. He currently serves as the National Coordinator for Indian Knowledge System, IKS Division, Ministry of Education, Government of India, where he leads national initiatives to integrate India's traditional knowledge with modern education and research. With a strong academic background, including international experience, he has contributed significantly to research in biofuels, sustainability, and systems analysis. Sir is recognized for promoting interdisciplinary learning, indigenous knowledge, and innovation-driven education across academic institutions. He is also recognized for promoting interdisciplinary learning. I'm repeating the same. He is also known for his visionary leadership and commitment to strengthening India's knowledge ecosystem, where he plays a key role in advancing Indian knowledge system at the national level. And dear participants, today he is going to enlighten us on the same topic, Indian knowledge system and NEP. Sir, we are really fortunate to have you here. And I would request Dr. Pallavi Mukherjee ma'am and Dr. Dhanashri Nagar ma'am to formally welcome you with a sapling. And now, sir, we cordially invite you here to address our participants.
Thank you. So do I have a slide changer? स्लाइड चेंज करने के लिए कुछ है क्या? also have a PowerPoint if that works better. I think maybe we can get started. I'll just change the slides from there. Don't worry about it. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all. And I'm assuming that most of you are faculty members. Is that correct? All of you are faculty members indeed, right? Right, excellent. So, excellent. How many of you? 2, 3. Oh, that entire bench there. Okay. You guys have formed a cohort. No, that's good. So, 6. Okay. So, I'll keep it interactive. So, please do interrupt me if you have any questions at any point of time. And I think I have about 1 hour, 20 minutes or something like that. Is that 2 hours? Okay. Then we'll have आराम से बात करेंगे. सबको हिंदी आता है? प्रॉब्लम नहीं है किसी को हिंदी में बात करने से? सही, ठीक है. So, basically today I want to talk a little bit about IKS, Bharatiya Jnana Parampara and the NEP, but mostly I will be talking about how do we really do research. Why should we do research in IKS? What is it that we say when we are talking about research in IKS? And how do we really do it? And then because I'm from basically the Indian Knowledge Systems Division, I'll also include a little bit about what is that we do in the Indian Knowledge Systems Division. So, without further ado, okay. Why should you really listen to this talk? Because it's important that we understand what is it that you are getting out of this. So maybe I'm obstructing your view here. So when we talk about Indian knowledge systems, one of the conceptions that people have it is about studying what we have done in the past and things like that. So whenever we talk about past, one of the things that English proverbs that comes to our mind is, old is gold, right? But, you know, we live in Malwa area, Malwa Prant mein hai hum log, and this is the place where Mahakavi Kalidasa walked in this land, in this part of our country. So he writes in Madhavikagnimithram, it's about 1800 years ago. He says, Puranam ityeva nasadhu sarvam nachapi kavyam navamithyavadhyam santah pariksham yatarat bhajante moodaha parapratyayineye buddhihi. What is it that he is saying? In Madhavikagnimithram, unka natak hai, usme unhone wo kehte hain. Puranam ityeva nasadhu sarvam. All that is old is not gold. That's what essentially he is saying. All that jo purana hai, wo sadhu nahi, sadhu sarvam. It's not great. Nachapi kavyam navamityavadhyam. Just because there is a new trend in poetry, don't discard it. Because he's a poet, so he's talking about poetry. Saying just because something is old, don't consider that as a gold standard. And just because something is new, don't discard it. He says, Santah pariksham yatarat bhajante. That's where the punchline is. Santah pariksham yatarat bhajante. The wise people examine things based on the merits and then talk about it, praise it. उनका भजन तब करते हैं जब उसका गुणों की परीक्षा करते हैं. Whereas, Moodaha, the fools, will be led by the opinions of others. Modah parapratyayine buddhi. And if you think about this, and then there is also another akshepa that we have whenever we talk about Indian knowledge systems, that we talk about भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरा है तो पूरा आध्यात्मिक है, पूजा होगा, ऐसे करके होगा. That's why I have put these two gentlemen there. एक तो स्वामी विवेकानंद जी हैं और दूसरे भी जानते होंगे आप लोग सब तो, Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest scientists of last century. And selfless, जो ऋषि बोलते हैं, ऋषित्व बोलते हैं ना, that's what he is an embodiment of. And again in one of the Upanishads, it says, Vidyam cha avidyam cha yastad vedo bhayam saha avidyaya mrutyum tirtha vidyayam mrutamashnute. This is the traditional view of Bharatiyas. हम सब आध्यात्म को ही नहीं करते. उसमें क्या बोल रहे हैं? विद्याम चा अविद्याम चा. जो हम लोग जो पढ़ाई करते हैं, including all the Vedas and Upanishads, are considered to be avidya, not vidya. What is the vidya? Vidya is something, and he says, in there the Shruti says, vidyam cha avidyam cha yastad vedo bhayam sa. इन दोनों को जानना है. अविद्या मृत्युम तीर्थवा. टेक्नोलॉजी के बारे में पढ़ते हैं. We study about all kinds of things. All of these things are for crossing the mrityu. That means crossing this martya loka or this earth, living a proper life. That is why this is useful, so we have to study. Why should we study science? Why should we study technology? Because we have to live a good life. उसके लिए. But then that is not sufficient, right? Maths में बोलते हैं ना, necessary condition, sufficient condition. It's a necessary condition but not sufficient. For that, we have to go next step, and they say Vidyayam Mrutamashnute. From the upasana of Vidya, we should do so that we attain the Amrutatva or the immortality. So we are talking about nurturing not only the physical self but also the Adhyatma self. That is the traditional view of Bharatiya Jnana Parampara. And we'll approach Indian knowledge systems with this kind of a thing, that Purana Mityeva Nasadu Sarvam. Just because it is there in our scriptures or in our texts or in our Shastras, we'll not accept it without critique. We'll take a critical view and take it from there. Well, that is the view that we should have. So therefore, I'm going to talk about 5 topics today. What is IKS? Why is it relevant today? How will it really help our nation and the world? How to do research? That's where I'll spend a lot of my time. And how is it different primarily? Because all of us have been trained in a particular way of research, doing research. And how is it different from that? And how should we integrate it into higher education? And then finally, a little bit about the IKS division itself. So if you think about what is really going on today, we are facing a lot of existential challenges, the entire world. We talk about Viksit Bharat by 2047. But then at the same time, if you think about the global population, we will be having 10 billion people. Right now, we have about 7.5 billion. So you are talking about increasing the population by 1/3, and we are not increasing the size of Earth by any means. So how are we going to feed all of these people? How are we going to provide food, fiber, clothes, houses, and then any other resources that basically will lead to at least a dignified living while protecting the nature and then taking care of the environment, because we don't really have another planet. And as Chief Seattle says, we don't inherit the earth, we borrow it from our children. So when you think about those things, it's really, there are limits to growth, as famously described in the book by Club of Rome in 1972. The title of the book itself was The Limits to Growth. There was a 40-year update in 2012, nothing improved. We were still on the same trajectories of consuming resources at an unsustainable path. So when you're looking at such a issue, world where there are existential crises, how do we solve them? That is really something that should bother us, IKS or no IKS. And it is in that context, if you see how are we trying to solve these existential problems, whether you look at economic systems, natural systems, any others, healthcare systems, any of these, we are basically in our disciplinary silos, trying to solve like those 6 blind men. Whereas the problem is this big elephant, which requires systemic approaches. We are trying to solve it, thinking it is the trunk, उसका पैर है, उसका पूंछ है, यही सब देख रहे हैं हम लोग. अपने disciplinary barriers हैं हमारे पास. Whereas what we should be really be thinking about is looking at that entire elephant and then trying to solve it. But then एक और चीज हमको देखना पड़ेगा कि we should not do harm. Right? That's also something that we should be really be looking at. So then coming to this question about what is IKS and why is it relevant, this is a big definition of IKS. Jnana, Vijnana, Jivana Darshana of people of Bharat continuously arising from out of deep experience, all of that stuff. But I'll skip all of that. I'll share the slide, so don't worry about that. And I'll just show you this picture. So now a question arises, which is a very natural one, especially among the youngsters. It will come. 2 plus 2 to 4 hai. Right? What is Indian about it? Acid or alkali mix karenge, you form a salt. What is Indian about it? That knowledge is knowledge. Knowledge of chemistry is knowledge of chemistry. Knowledge of mathematics is knowledge of mathematics. What makes it Indian? Should we call it as an Indian knowledge, Indian mathematics, Indian chemistry? This is where we need to ask this question, why do we have this Visheshana, the word there of Indian appended to the knowledge systems? When you really think about it, is it that only India has a knowledge system, no other country has knowledge systems? If you really look into this, it is not the case that only India has knowledge systems. Other civilizational states have knowledge systems. It's always the civilizations that have the knowledge systems. That is unique to them. So for example, China will have their own knowledge system. You can call it as Sinic or Chinese knowledge system. Greco-Roman knowledge system. You can have maybe African knowledge systems. That's why this is a plural, systems. There are many, because they are all perspectives. So then the question comes, what makes this knowledge system Indian? What makes this Chinese? So if you think about it, think about maybe 15,000 years ago, just after the last ice age, when glaciers were melting all over the world, and then population was very less, and then we were all still in our early forms of civilization was coming up. What would the people then see? For example, somebody living in India at that time would have seen, when I say India, I mean not political India today, but really the Akhanda Bharat that I'm talking about, the entire Indian subcontinent, Bharatavarsha. When you think about people living here, they would have seen summer aata hai, garmi hai. Uske baad they would have seen rains coming. Then they would have seen a season where rains stop. Then some kind of a pre-winter happens. There is winter after that. Then there is, again, spring comes, flowers, all of those things come. This is what they will see for 1 year. Next year, the same kind of observations are made. So that is essentially the part of Vijnana, or the loosely used word there. Vijnana is practical physical observations that they're making. Now, from these observations, what kind of a mental model will you make? You'll say, oh, after the summer, there is rainy season, there is that, and then there are 6 ritus, 6 seasons. And they go in a cycle, right? That's the mental model that we'll have. So they will say, Ritu Chakra hai. That is a mental model based on all of these observations that we have made. So it is like doing an experiment and then distilling that into a small equation. That's essentially what we do normally. Now think about the same thing. They're looking at some kind of a chicken or some kind of a hen or something. They'll see an egg, comes into a small chicken, grows big, and then lays another egg, and then there is a life cycle that goes on. They see the plants, there is a life cycle that goes on. Then from all of these things, they say, oh, everything goes in cycles. Then the philosophy, the Jivana Darshana that comes out of all of these models is that everything is a chakra. Kal ka chakra hai. Kala chakra. Right? That's the philosophy that they will have. The Jivana Darshana that will arise out of. How did this arise from it? Arose from deep experience, observation, experimentation, and analysis. Because this is not one person's thing. This is a civilizational experience that we are talking about. And now think about somebody who might be in Sweden or some northern part there. They would only see 2 seasons. And it will not be summer, winter things. They will only see light and dark. Because 6 months, that's what their experience will be. So they will have a different way of relating to the nature. So that civilizational wisdom will be encompassed in the knowledge systems, and that makes that knowledge system particular to that civilization. So when we say Indian knowledge systems, what we are referring to is this thousands of years of experience that has been developed into these mental models and to a philosophical outlook for the life. And this triad of Jnana, Vijnana, and the Jivana Darshana is the kernel of what makes the knowledge system Indian. This will be expressed in various disciplines as the drishti. And the parampara, that jnana is transmitted through various, basically, generations. And that is the jnana parampara that is transmitted. All with a prayojana, particularly laukika prayojana. It has to have some utility, otherwise no knowledge system is conserved. That's essentially how knowledge systems are, basically how they evolve from the experiences, and then how they get these adjectives as Indian, Chinese, whatever, and so on and so forth. Now, when we talk about that parampara, because we are all faculty members and students here, I will talk a little bit about that parampara. What is this parampara that I'm talking about? That essentially is that system which maintains the flow of knowledge, connects the past to the future through the present. And how does that happen? First of all, we preserve the knowledge. Basically, we are preserving the books, preserving the manuscripts, preserving the art forms. All of those things are essentially nothing but the way that we celebrate festivals, preserving the culture. Those are all preservation. But that is at a very physical level or at a mechanical level. But underlying that is the preserving the drishti, the perspective. That jivana darshana is the core, and that has to be preserved. So these two parts are important part of the preservation. So one at a physical level, and second at a model level or a drishti level. But then when we talk about preservation, that's not enough, right? It's good to preserve the things, but then it is also important to transmit this to the next generation. That is where the transmission part comes in, whenever we talk about parampara. And when we talk about transmission, we are talking about how this knowledge is transmitted to the next generation. There we can adopt whatever means that we need to. So it is not always necessary that we should sit under a tree and learn, like they used to do in 300 years ago or 400 years ago. Today we have all these PowerPoints, all of these things. We could even do it in an online lecture because we have the technologies. Earlier I had to use different metaphors. Now I can use a different metaphor. For example, आप लोगों ने, may not be you guys, but maybe you all, चाचा चौधरी का कॉमिक्स पढ़ा है आप लोगों ने? चाचा चौधरी का दिमाग किससे ज्यादा तेज चलता है? कंप्यूटर से ज्यादा तेज चलता है, right? Why? Because those were the days when computers were coming up, and हम लोगों के लिए as humans, कंप्यूटर सबसे तेज चलता है, दिमाग से भी तेज चलता है, जिसका दिमाग कंप्यूटर से तेज चलता है, right? That was a metaphor we used. But what is a metaphor that Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita use? Ratha. रथ पे बैठे हैं, आत्मा is the rathi, सारथी बुद्धि है. इस तरह से, because that was the technology that was available, so they were trying to relate it to that. Examples change. Did the philosophy change? Not really. So think about that kind of a thing. So that is essentially why we need to adopt with the times. Now, preservation and transmission has two parts. Very important part of a living parampara is the creation part. The knowledge creation is an integral part of any living parampara. You don't call a stagnant pool of water a river. That becomes stinky very soon. If you want a living river, that means it has to flow continuously. That flow of knowledge means there are new innovations, new discoveries that happen on a continuous basis. Therefore, this knowledge creation is a continuous process in Indian knowledge systems. It has slowed down in some places. Last 200 years it has slowed down, but it has never stopped. That is what makes Indian civilization a living civilization, and then Indian knowledge systems a living tradition of knowledge transmission. So when we talk about Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, we are not talking about history. What are we talking about? A living tradition that is connecting from the past to the future through present. And therefore neither is it limited only to the Vedas, Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. It goes beyond that. In fact, if you look at the number of manuscripts that are out there in Sanskrit today, there are more like 5-6 million. 95% of them are not about Vedas or Upanishads or Puranas. They are about other things like Sangeeta Shastra, they are about Natya Shastra, they are about metallurgy, they are about agriculture, they are about all of Vyakarana, Nyaya, all of the philosophy. These are the kind of things that we have. So it's important to understand that when we are talking about Bharati Jnana Parampara, we are talking about this entire knowledge corpus of a civilization that went to thousands of years. Now, what is this drishti I'm harping about? Right? So I've been saying Bharati drishti ko preserve karna chahiye. That is most important. What is it that I'm meaning? That jivana darshana that comes out. Essentially, you can think about 4 critical elements as a part of the Bharatiya Drishti. The very first one is, whenever we look at anything from a Bharatiya Drishti, we look at it at three levels: Adhibhautika, Adidaivika, and Adhyatmika. Adhibhautika is a physical level of looking at things. Adidaivika is a mental plane of looking at things. Adhyatmika is a spiritual way of looking at things. So for example, even think about a small example of me feeding a stray dog on a street, and I gave a piece of my roti to that. At a very physical level, Adhibhautika level, all I'm doing is showing some compassion and feeding a dog. That's all it is. At a Adidaivika level, the hunger in me and hunger in that dog is the same. So I'm kind of empathizing with that feeling of hunger, which is the same. So at a physical level, it was compassion. At a Adidaivika level, it is more about recognizing that there is some element that is same between us. So I'm sharing that. And what is it at a spiritual level? The same divinity in me is also there in that dog. At that level, there is no difference between me and that stray dog. So I'm just doing the same thing, what needs to be done. So you see, you can look at every small thing from that kind of a three lenses: Adhibhautika, Adidaivika, and Adhyatmika. Now we also have, what are the goals that we need to pursue? There are only 4 things that you can pursue: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Whatever you can think about will fit into this framework. This is called basically analytic or synthetic kind of a framework, not an enumerative framework. इसमें घर चाहिए, जॉब चाहिए, गाड़ी चाहिए, ये सब अर्थ में आ जाता है. उसको एंजॉय करना है, that will come into kama. Ethically enjoy करना है, कमाना है, that comes under the framework of dharma. And at the end of it, we also want this paradharma. ये सबसे छूट भी चाहिए, that is the moksha. So these are the 4 pursuits that you can have. These are the 4 purusharthas. And then there are also 4 avasthas: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. 4 stages of life. And then circular time, that kind of a cycles that I was talking about. Everything has a srishti, sthiti, laya. The small cycles embedded in great cycles, embedded in bigger cycles. So every day we have a srishti, sthiti, laya. When we sleep, when we wake up, it is srishti, then sthiti, going through the motions of the day. In the night we are sleeping, that is laya. So many of these cycles are embedded in a greater cycle. We are born, we are going through our motions of life, and then we pass away sometime. So that is a bigger cycle. Same thing happens with the solar system. Same thing happens with the cosmos. So small cycles embedded in larger cycles. That is the circularity of time that we have. So this, essentially looking at these 4 elements, you can think about these are the 4 critical elements of what forms the Bharatiya Drishti. Now, what is it that makes the difference between the Paschatya and Bharatiya Drishti? So when we talk about Bharatiya Drishti, we talk about, normally when we talk about Paschatya Drishti, we are, if we do a Purva Paksha or looking at it from our Bharatiya lens, the models that we talk about are the Drishti of Hita, something that is good for us; Priya, something that is pleasurable for us; Labha, something that is profitable for us. But then it is all based on the Jada, based on material consumption, material things. That is the Drishti. And these are called in our traditions as Laghu Mulya, the smaller values. The entire civilization of the West focuses on these. It is not that this is bad, we should be focusing on these, but that is not sufficient. It is necessary, but not sufficient. What is the thing that will make it sufficient is we need to go beyond these and then think about the Dharma ki Drishti, Nyaya ki Drishti, Satya ki Drishti, and then based on the Chaitanya, not Jadatva. Consciousness, not the materialistic thing. And then these are called Guru Mulyas. Guru is here heavier or bigger values. And so when we talk about the kind of narratives that we are fighting today, it is not between truth and false. It's between partial truths. Therefore, it makes it very, very difficult to really see what is this. Because especially with the Jada Drishti, the Prayojana is missing. Yes, I will have a bigger vehicle. I will have a bigger home. To what end? In the end, it comes only to this: something should be pleasurable for me, priya hona chahiye, something should be good for me, hita, labha, mera profit hona chahiye. But beyond that, what? That prayojana is missing. And if that is missing, then there is a crisis of mental health in any situation. And this is where we need to be focusing on those aspects as well. Okay. Now, That's all good, but that's all too theoretical. Let's take a practical example. So you see, we all celebrate Dashara in many ways. So or Durga Puja. So we have Durga Puja like this in Bengal. We have Ram Leela, we have Ravan Dahan, we have Garba in Gujarat, we have the procession in Mysore. All of these things are ways in which we celebrate those Sharan Navratris, right? So can you say, what makes Dashara Dashara? Is it that I have to have these elephants and have a procession, otherwise it will not be called Dashara? Should I say that, okay, if I don't have the Garba that day, in those Navratris, it's not Dashara at all? Not like that, right? We all recognize कोई भी एक एलिमेंट ऐसा नहीं है जिसको निकालने से वो नहीं रहेगा, ऐसा नहीं है कुछ, सब चाहिए, लेकिन वो क्या चीज है जो चाहिए, right? That is a drishti. I'll give you a solid example which you will understand very clearly, even simplify it further. There's a rope, right? Let's say we take this rope, black rope like that, and I put it right here in this room at the entrance. मैंने रखा है यहाँ पे. Little dark here, so that's what it is. We all know it is a rope. And somebody is coming from outside. Somebody who has never been into this room is coming. He or she is coming. And then they mistake it for a snake. Because it's a little dark, right? So they say, oh, there could be a snake. And a reporter goes. Reporters to har jagah hote hain. So they will go and ask, what do you see there? And then that person says, ek Vishila, Krur, Bhayanak, Saap hai. Right? That's what, and then they are shouting, Arey, Saap hai, Bhayanak Saap hai. Now the reporter comes to you, and then, what is your response? Your comment, please. What should our response be? हम बोलेंगे अक्रूर है, सांप वो साधु जीवी सांप है, वेजिटेरियन स्नेक है, कुछ नहीं करता है, वो जनरली यहाँ घूमते रहता है. If that is our response, is that correct response? Why? We are negating them, right? हम बोल रहे हैं ना, साधु जीवी है, क्रूर नहीं है, वेजिटेरियन है, भयानक नहीं है, सब तो बोल रहे हैं. सत्य नहीं है. क्यों नहीं है? वो सांप ही नहीं है वो. So our thing is, वो सांप ही नहीं है. It is their misconception that it is a snake, not ours. हमारी दृष्टि अलग है. So when you say it is not सांप at all, then when you have this Rajya Drishti, all of those things fall away. You don't have to justify those things again anymore. Now, look at this picture. What do you see here on this picture? You see some women dancing. There is somebody going and offering some sweets or something in a box to another lady standing on a pedestal. She's holding some kind of a frond or something, holding something in the hand, a book in the hand, right? Her face is black. Rest of their faces are white, right? And this dress, what does it remind you? Some kind of nuns in a church or something like that, right? That's what it looks like. So this looks like a bunch of nuns dancing, and one nun going to another one standing on a pedestal and offering something. The one on the pedestal has a black face. Now, where is this picture from? This picture is from Marco Polo's travelogue. Marco Polo, as you know, is a world traveler. He traveled all around the world, right? He traveled through India too, mostly through the sea coast. Then this picture is from his travelogue. And this picture was made by a French painter. Because travelogue है, पूरा घूम के गया. So कोई बहुत पैसे वाला था, बोला लिख दो मेरे नाम के, then dedicated to me. So commissioned the work. Did सिर्फ नॉवल की तरह रहेगा तो अच्छा नहीं लगता है, कुछ पिक्चर्स भी चाहिए. So they commissioned some painters to do the painting. So there one French painter painted this. And that French painter was somewhere near Paris, basically. Lived near Paris. अच्छा पेंटर था, अच्छा सी ड्रॉ तो अच्छा किया है. Do you know what this picture was about? A temple in Malabar, Kerala. This was the description that Marco Polo gave, and the French painter painted this. Now, think about this for a minute, okay? पेंटर को दोष नहीं देंगे हम, अभी देखेंगे क्यों, क्या प्रॉब्लम है यहां पे। मार्को पोलो क्या देखा होगा? कुछ ऐसा देखा होगा। केरला है, वो विलुक्कू दिया के चारों ओर मंदिर में वो मोहिनी अट्टम में कुछ तो कर रहे हैं, और मंदिर में देवी है, देवी के हाथ में एक वो इक्षुदंड होता है और हाथ में पुस्तक भी होता है ना, भगवती के हाथ में। वो देखा होगा मार्को पोलो ने, उसका डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया। अब उसने क्या कर दिया? उसने ये कर दिया। अब देखो सब डिटेल्स है। देयर आर लेडीज दैट आर डांसिंग, देयर इज वन ऑन ए पेडेस्टल, वो मूर्ति है तो उसका मुंह काला है, ग्रेनाइट से बना होगा, और हाथ में इक्षुदंड पकड़ा है, पुस्तक पकड़ा है, कोई जाके नहीं वो चढ़ा रहे हैं। ऑल द डिटेल्स आर देयर, बट इज दिस इंडियन? नॉट एट ऑल, राइट? नाउ थिंक अबाउट दिस। Rajju Sarpa. See the point? Why? That French painter never stepped into India. He never came to India. So for him, मार्को पोलो ने जब ये डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया होगा, वो तो उस टाइम पे तो क्रिश्चियनिटी था मेजर, है ना, तो उसको तो लगेगा होली प्लेस क्या है? एक चर्च है। चर्च में तो सब लोग जाते नहीं है, वो नन्स रहते हैं, तो उसने नन्स का पेंटिंग किया। इसको बोल दिया था वो भगवान को वहां पे कोई पेडेस्टल पे रखते हैं, तो पेडेस्टल ग्रीक रोमन पिलर्स पे लगा दिया पेडेस्टल पे, और हाथ में कुछ पकड़ा है करके बोला। सो एक फ्रॉन्ड जो वहां दिखता है, पाम का फ्रॉन्ड, वो रख दिया, खजूर के पेड़ का फ्रॉन्ड रख दिया, एंड देन हाथ में कुछ पुस्तक पकड़ा दिया, और कोई जाके ऑफर कर रहे। थिंक अबाउट दिस, ही इज नॉट रॉन्ग, बिकॉज दैट वाज हिज दृष्टि। But to say that this is India is wrong. Correct? This is the Bharatiya Drishti. This is way we should be describing Bharat. Why is this? Now come back to this one and think about it. What makes Dashara Dashara? And this is not a simple theoretical problem I'm talking about. This fellow, his name is James Stuart Mill. He wrote 6 volumes of the history of British India, which is currently reference text in many history programs in our country. And the point is, he never stepped in India. Now think about what he would have written. And he says, I will take the descriptions from the natives and you are all like 6 blind men and I am the judge. Arrogance. वो preface में लिखता है वो. Arrogance says, I will judge you all and I will tell you what you guys are thinking. At least वो painter तो humble था. This fellow, and we are studying this now about India. Is this even correct? Just think about it. Now, there's another thing why Bharatiya Drishti is so important, because it is important to maintain the Drishti, because see, most of you are from technical background, I guess, right? Technology, science, math, stats पढ़ा है ना सबने? तो मान लो ये कुछ ग्राफ है, and I have made some observations. They are not invalid observations. I want to point that out. They are all valid, experimentally collected observations. Now, R square तो सब जानते हैं, करते हैं हम लोग, है ना? Fit a line, okay? And what do you call these points? Huh? Outliers? Outliers. Now, have you stopped ever to think, why are they called outliers, or why should they be called outliers? We call them outliers because they don't match with my line. But then think about it, where is the truth? Is it in your line or is it in the nature? The Western model of thinking is, it says the line is the primary thing. Whereas the Bharatiya model says, this is the truth. The truth resides in nature. Truth does not reside in your models. The only utility of model, as Nilakanta Somayaji says in his 14th century text on astronomy, the only purpose of models is to predict and nothing else. There is no higher purpose for the model. There is no whereas the Western models, all the way going back to the Greek model, the Greek thought is that this line is primary. That is where you are trying to think. You will see this thing happen in Newton's thinking. You'll see that everywhere. Indian model says, no, these are equally valid experiences, not just these. And if I tell you, these are all wrong, my line is the correct line, my model is the correct model, everything is wrong. This is what we say, outliers, we discard them, right? We discard that data. What right do we have to discard that data? They are actual observations. Then, if you have to be inherently be inclusive like Bharatiya model, what do we say? We'll draw a black line here and then say, in this context, this black line is correct. In this context, this red line is correct. In this context, the green line is correct. In this context, blue line is correct. As Bharatiyas, we can say, all the lines are correct, all the lines are wrong, none of them represent the thing completely, the nature completely. Correct? We can say that. We can say all the lines are correct. In their context, they are correct. All the lines are wrong. Obviously, black line will be wrong here. Makes no sense here, right? And we can say, when you look at it, really it's all, from an Advaita perspective, nothing matters. Now, you may think this is something that is very foreign to us. You actually practice this in your homes. You practice it inherently as Bharatiyas. We just don't know how to recognize it. I'll give you one example. आप शिव पुराण में देखेंगे, शिव उसमें we have Shanmathas, right? Shiva, Vishnu, Vaishnava, Shakti, Ganapatya, they're all Shanmathas. There are Buddha, Jaina, Sikh, all of those things are there. So each of them, Vishnu, if you look at Vaishnavas, if you talk to a Vaishnava, they will say Vishnu ही परमेश्वर है, परमात्मा है, और कोई नहीं है. If you talk to Shakteya, they will say Devi ही परमेश्वरी है, और कोई नहीं है, सब उनके नीचे हैं. If you talk to Shaiva, they will say शिवजी ही सबसे बड़े परमात्मा हैं, सब उनके ही अवतार हैं या उनके नीचे हैं, ऐसे करके बोलेंगे. So now if you look into the examples of where, if you go to भागवत पुराण, वहाँ पे आपको दिखेंगे भागवत पुराण, ये विष्णु पुराण, ये सब में आपको दिखेंगे शिवजी भस्मासुर को वर दे भाग रहे हैं, फिर उनको विष्णु बचाने आते हैं मोहिनी का अवतार लेके. दैट स्टोरी यू विल फाइंड देयर, क्योंकि वैष्णवों के लिए वो स्टोरी वहाँ फिट बैठता है. अब दूसरा एक होगा सागर मंथन का, आलाहल पी लिया, तो विष्णु भी भाग रहे हैं शिव जी के पास, वो शिव पुराण में मिलेगा आपको. और देवी भागवतम में मिलेगा कि माँ आई थी, सबको ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वर सबको उन्होंने ही सब दिया था, वही लक्ष्मी पार्वती सरस्वती बनकर आई थी, वही परमेश्वरी है, यहां मिलेगा. नाउ टेल मी विच ऑफ देम इज करेक्ट. शिवों के लिए तो वो करेक्ट है, दैट मॉडल ऑफ शिवा इज परमात्मा इज करेक्ट फॉर देम. वैष्णवों के लिए ये करेक्ट है, देवी की उपासना करने वालों के लिए ये करेक्ट है. Who am I to tell that my line is the correct line and your line or your experiences are not correct? We don't do that. And this is where it comes from. My line is the correct line. My book is the correct book. My God is the correct God. This is where the problems come in the world. If you want to solve this epistemological violence, the only way is to have this kind of a Bharati drishti which says all lines are correct, all lines are wrong as well at the same time. This is the reason why we need Bharati drishti. It's a very important point, because if we can get that, then everything flows from it. Now, how will this thing help our nation? I just want to talk about a few things, like in economics, life goals, sustainable development. You talk about any of these areas, you'll see that Bharati drishti helps, and it actually manifests. So for example, in the very earthy or laukika discipline of economics, if you look into macroeconomics, we talk about capitalism, right? That's one of the big things. What do we talk about in capitalism? We say there has to be Profit maximization, शुद्ध लाभ होना चाहिए, nothing but शुद्ध लाभ. Now if you are only maximizing the profit, what will you do? You will not care about what happens to your workers or to the nature. You will only be interested in getting the maximum profit. That will lead to exploitation of humans and nature. Also lead to pseudo democracies. Now if you look into what happened during 19th century, 1850s, 1860s, in London, at that time London was the capitalist ka gad tha wo pura. That was the center of capitalism in the world. So then they had all these problems for workers. Workers were exploited. Itna pollution hota tha. You know why our chhatris are black? The umbrellas are black. They used to be, that cloth used to be imported from England. And in England, they were made black because आप भगवान का छतरी देखोगे इंडिया में या राजाओं का छतरी देखोगे, they're all white, they're not black. But then normal ones that we use are all, nowadays we are getting colorful because you can't keep color out of Indians for too long. वो black रख के वो छतरी रहता था ना पहले, क्यों रहता था? Because that cloth used to be imported from England, where in England, because the suit used to be so bad that if it was any other color, you can't, I mean, it looks very bad, so you have to wash it every day. Exactly. इतना ज़्यादा हो रहा था कि कोल बर्न कर रहे थे. It was all like smog and all that place. I mean, Delhi से 10 गुना worse था. And workers were being exploited. And it was in that time that Karl Marx, he wrote Das Kapital. And that's where he comes in and then says, you see, this kind of exploitation of humans and nature is not right. But then he swings to the other end of the spectrum. He goes to the other end and then says, Shunya Labh. Karl Marx, right there. See. Right? You see, what he thought about was he was not an evil person or anything. You see why that came. Then you have a better understanding of how these things were formed. So it swung to the other end and then said, किसी का प्रॉफिट नहीं होगा, सबको समान बांटेंगे, एक्सप्लॉयटेशन नहीं होगा. बट ही वाज थिंकिंग अबाउट ओनर्स एंड वर्कर्स. बट विद इन वर्कर्स क्या होता है? जिसको 30 वो पढ़ेगा नहीं उसको भी वही मार्क्स दूंगा, और जो पढ़ रहा है उसको भी वही मार्क्स दूंगा, तो 2 साल बाद क्या होगा? कोई नहीं पढ़ेगा क्लास में, है ना? So that's what happens, stifling of innovation and entrepreneurship. But then there is also exploitation even in those cases, and it will lead to dictatorships. We have seen these. Now think about what was Bharat's response to all of this. We had a thriving economy. अभी तो US का 16-17% में बहुत बड़ा चीज मानते हैं हम लोग. We were at 26-27%. Even as late as 17th century, 1750s, we were at 24-25% of the world's GDP. China was another equivalent. So where was that coming from? I mean, right from Gupta's age. Angus Madison का report है इसमें. Because they wanted to show that these countries are all poor. But then the report, when it came out, it was a shock for all of them. World Bank का report है वो. And they show that, I mean, for 1500 years, 1700 years, we were at 25-24% of the world's GDP. How is it possible that we could sustain it? It is because of that model. You see that on every door. Shubha Labh. लाभ तो मुझे होना चाहिए, उसके बिना तो मैं काम नहीं करूंगा, लेकिन शुभ भी होना चाहिए सबका. आपका प्रैक्टिकल ये भी एक्सपीरियंसेस भी होगा. आप जो गांव में या अपने घर में, जहां पे भी टाउन में, हम लोग सबका एक फेवरेट किराना स्टोर होता है, जहां पे सब लोग, हम लोग, हमारे पिताजी भी वहीं खरीदते हैं, सब लोग वहीं जाते हैं. हमारा फैमिली वाला किराना स्टोर होता है. वहां जाकर बोलिए कभी कि चावल ये वाला दे दो, तो वो बोलेगा आपके लिए नहीं है, मैं दूसरा दूंगा. एक्सपीरियंस हुआ? घी दे दो तो ये नहीं दूंगा, दूसरा दूंगा. क्यों नहीं देगा वो? बिकॉज देयर इज दैट कनेक्ट. एंड व्हेन यू हैव दैट शुभ लाभ कॉन्सेप्ट, वहां थोड़ा जिंदा है अभी. धर्मपाल जी लिखते हैं ब्यूटीफुल, उसमें एक ब्यूटीफुल ट्री में या कहीं और दूसरे उनका राइटिंग्स में है. सो अपेरेंटली ब्रिटिशर्स थॉट दैट ओके, सब लोगों को ना छाया में, इंडिया में इतना धूप था, सो दे वांटेड ऑल दी स्मॉल ट्रेडर्स टू सिट अंडर द ट्रीज. तो उन्होंने बोला जाके वहां पे पेड़ लगा दिए हैं, वहां पे जाके उसके नीचे आप लोग को परमिशन है, जाके व्यापार करो अपना. एंड दे सॉ अ वेरी स्ट्रेंज थिंग. ऑल द ट्रेडर्स, स्मॉल ट्रेडर्स, दे वुड कम आउट ऑफ द शेड और उसके ऊपर अपना कुछ तो ऐसे छोटा सा बना के उसके नीचे अपना बिजनेस कर रहे थे. सो दीज फेलोज आस्क्ड, व्हाई डिड यू, व्हाई नॉट go under the tree that we have given you. बोलते हैं वो पीपल का पेड़ है, उसके नीचे झूठ नहीं बोल सकते. So, you see, the dharma acts as that check on unbridled profit motive and also on exploitation or also on not creating wealth. बैठ कर खाने का भी मन वो नहीं करता है ना. It's opposition. It's not in accordance with the dharma to sit and eat and to exploit others. So that's like a check. Now, these were all the kind of things that we had. Now many of you may be from management background as well. So you see the kind of the sartha, जो कारवां बोलते हैं ना हम लोग उर्दू में, तो that's what is sartha. We had these sarthas. They were actually like expeditions that people used to go on. How the financing networks used to work. There were litigations. How did they solve them? The security of those basically sarthas or karwans. How were they acting like vehicles for transmitting the culture and the dharma across the world? Very interesting things to study about. And now, in accounting, maybe some of you are from accounting background. Any accounting background? Now when you write the accounting background, you write credits and debits in this way, right? If you look into Bahi Khata, it's the other way around. Do you know why? In the opposite direction. Do you know why? Bahi Khata was the original form. It went to Arabs, they wrote it this way, and then went to Europe. उन्होंने copy ठीक से नहीं किया, exactly copy किया था, so that's what. But Bahi Khata, there is a additional thing that is there in these kind of things which is not there in the accounting that we do right now. For example, in the accounting, you lending money to me or to your friend is noted as the same two entries. But we know, realistically speaking, that you giving money to me, because you may not know me, is a more risky proposition than giving it to your friend. So there is a risk element that you need to incorporate into that. Those systems, Indian systems actually have that. So we have a project on it from IIIT Jodhpur or Jaipur, I guess, where they're actually looking into this risk-based financing, how that accounting systems can be improved based on Indian models. Anyway, so there are just anything that you touch, you have so many things. At a personal level, we talk about consumption-based economics, GDP and all of that thing is based on the consumption-based one. So that obviously will lead to exploitation of the nature, unlimited growth paradigm on a limited planet, all of these things. And then we are talking, but what Bharatiya model talks about is a pursuit of ananda, thriving with nature, growth that meets the needs of all and things like that. Same thing in healthcare. So if you look at the healthcare, we talk about, in fact, until 2004 or something like that, the definition of health was absence of disease by World Health Organization. So it was a disease-centric model. And it was about treatment of disease. More of disease care rather than health care. Ayurveda talks about swasthya. In fact, in very first shlokas of the Charaka Samhita, says the purpose of this shastra is swasthasya swasthya rakshanam aturasya roga shamanam, protecting the health of the healthy, then treating the diseased. So first of all, if somebody is healthy, they should not be diseased, they should not fall ill. That should be our purpose of a healthcare system, care for the health. There are actually some villages I heard, even in Kerala, where the doctor gets paid if everybody is healthy throughout the year. If somebody falls ill, he does not get paid that year. So think about the system. What is the system that we are incentivizing today? If everybody falls ill, doctors are going to be happy. Now, again, same thing with that wealth. We only talk about monetary capital or Dhanalakshmi today. Packages kitna hai. But then we are worshippers of Ashtalakshmi. What are these Ashtalakshmis that we talk about? That Artha is a multifold dimensions of wealth. Vidya Lakshmi, the knowledge capital. Vijay Lakshmi, that go-getter type of entrepreneurial spirit. Dhairya Lakshmi, that psychological health, mental well-being to basically tolerate and resist all the ups and downs that we face in life. Gaja Lakshmi, basically the potential of animal wealth and diversity you can think about. And then there is Santana Lakshmi, progeny, and then the next generation. And Dhanya Lakshmi, food security, Adi Lakshmi. These are eightfold dimensions of wealth we talk about. That is why on Dhanteras, Lakshmi ji comes along with Dhanvantari. So Dhanvantari carries a pot of Amrita And Dhanvantari is the originator of Ayurveda. So imagine, look at the symbolism. We are talking about Lakshmi ji coming. So that is wealth in all dimensions, health in all dimensions, leading to the Amrutatva, Amruta. That is what we celebrate on Dhanteras, not just buying some metals which has reduced to now. But that is a philosophical concept of Dhanteras. Anyway, so Ayurveda also, again, if you look at this, there is also differences in the approaches because of the drishti differences. We take systemic approaches of Ayurveda versus reductionist approaches. I'll not really talk about these. Then let's talk about how do we do research in IKS. So if you want to acquire knowledge about the world, there are only 3 ways in which you can acquire knowledge. The first thing is called first-person inquiry, not very imaginatively. Second way is called second-person inquiry, and the third one is called third-person inquiry. And I'll give you another example of that. Let's say there is a cup of chai before you. The first-person inquiry is, I drink the chai and then experience it, and then say chai is good. That is first-person inquiry. Second-person inquiry, I drink the chai and tell you how good it is. The third-person inquiry, both of us don't drink the chai. We put thermometers, color meters, look at the weight, volume. That is the third-person inquiry. Most of the scientific pursuit that we do is third-person inquiry today. Because first-person inquiry is called subjective and experiential. So it is set aside. What is objective is the third-person inquiry. Therefore, we basically pursue that. These are the only 3 ways. Now, when we talk about science, it only relies on the third-person inquiry. Bharati Jnana Parampara relies on all 3. Scientific methodology has the third-person inquiry and that portion of the second-person inquiry which is dependent on third-person inquiry. That means, if I have done this experiment as a scientist and I publish this in a journal paper, you reading it will accept that as true. That is a second-person inquiry. I am telling you through a paper. And that is validated. Why a peer-reviewed journal? Because that is an unbiased view. I don't have an agenda there. That's really the thing, right? That's what that science is today dependent on these things. Now, so when I talk about first-person, second-person and third-person inquiry, I'm not talking about pseudoscience. Please note that. Pseudoscience is things where you cannot verify. I have dreamt of a pink pony with 4 horns. There is no way you can verify that. But if I tell you, I went into this, volume can be reduced a little bit, I guess. Don't worry, maybe I can reduce it. Yeah. So the whole idea is, yeah. वॉल्यूम कम करना बस ओके एकदम ठीक है बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा था ठीक है सो द होल आइडिया इज दैट let's say there is a meditation practice where I say you can actually achieve this kind of a bliss if you follow this meditation practice. That is actually possible through a first-person inquiry. I give you the algorithm of how to do it, you practice it, you will also feel. But if I tell you I dreamt of a pink pony with 4 horns, there is no way anybody can verify. You see, that is pseudoscience versus what is verifiable theory in this case. So even with first-person inquiry, you can have verifiable theories, what the point I'm trying to make. Third person to hoga hi hoga. Now, if you look at the Aristotelian logic, it talks about 3 things, 3-step process. The first one is major premise, and then there is a minor premise, and then there is a conclusion. So this statement, right? Wherever there is fire, there is smoke. Right? We say that. Or wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Right? Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. This is a very commonly used thing that we say. That assumes this kind of an Aristotelian logic. Now if I tell you that there is smoke on that hill, right? Then the Aristotelian logic will say wherever there is smoke, there is fire. This is the major universal statement. Then there is a minor premise that says, on that hill I see smoke. Then you conclude, because that hill has smoke and that is related to fire, that hill has fire. This is the Aristotelian logic. What is the Nyaya method? Nyaya has what is called as a Panchavayava. Nyaya, which is a way in which we argue. Nyaya is not, ये हिंदी में जो न्याय बोलते हैं ना, justice नहीं है ये. Nyaya is logic, Sanskrit term for logic. How you argue. So you have 5-step process. You say there is a pratijna. The hill has fire. That's what you want to prove. Then you say hetu, or the reason. Why do you say that hill has fire? Because it has smoke. Now there is something called an udaharana, which is completely missing in the Aristotelian logic, which says something called a universal concomitancy, vyapti. It's called as a vyapti. Because wherever there is smoke, there is fire. That's the statement. See, this is the same statement as what we saw earlier, right? See, the same statement as this. What is different is this part. Like a kitchen. Like in a kitchen. Why? Because there you see a fire and a smoke. Because Nyaya, some argument can be done that you see, I saw a lake in the morning today, and then there was smoke coming out, the fog that comes out. So how can you say there is fire? Right? You cannot. So you have to give a solid example and say, like a kitchen. It is not like a water. So like a kitchen. That smoke is of this nature, like what you see in kitchen. Because it is of this nature, you can say, Upanaya, the hill has that kind of smoke which you find in a kitchen. Not the kind of smoke that you find in a water body on a cold day. Therefore, hill has fire. You see, this 5-step process, what it does is, the third step is the most critical one. Because it talks about the vyapti or the universal concomitance, this ensures that you don't get into non-realistic situations. You cannot prove a statement in Nyaya if it does not occur in reality. Therefore, this uses 5-part things, and then the whole idea is not just to prove, but also to teach and eliminate doubt at each step. Whereas Aristotelian logic was primarily about focusing on the formal structure to prove something irrespective of the psychology or the process. There's a difference. Now, this is something that we are all familiar with. We use induction, deduction, logic computation, all of its knowability paradox, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. They're all mechanics that we use to say what is scientific, what is not scientific. So if it follows the scientific method, because scientific method accepts only the third-person inquiry, and that part of second-person inquiry based on the third-person inquiry. I gave you one example of that earlier. So if it follows that, it is called scientific method. And if it is following scientific method, it will be called science or scientific. Anything that does not follow this is called unscientific. Now, what is the thing that we have in Bharatiya traditions? We have something called as a Pramana Shastra. Pramata is the person who is trying to know, get knowledge about Prameya, that object. And Prama is that state which you will acquire. And the valid means of acquiring the knowledge about this Prameya, the object of study, is called Pramana. So now there are 6 typical types of Pramanams that are used. There are more, but 6 are the most common ones. 99% of the time you will encounter these 6. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Shabda, Upamana, Arthapatya, Anuvalabdhi. Pratyaksha is one that you can actually use your senses to gather. Anumana is the inference. Shabda is like your peer-reviewed paper. Somebody, authority who speaks. Anything that is acceptable as per the pramanams, it will be called pramanikam, and otherwise apramanikam. Scientific, unscientific. That is a corollary, the mapping that you can. Now we have one school of thought called Charavaka in this country. We had, rather, right? Lokayata. That's what Chanakya calls them. So they accept only pratyaksha as the pramana. They will not accept any other thing. So they say, I have to see, I have to touch, I have to smell. If I cannot do that, it doesn't exist. Right? Your feelings don't exist for them. Why? You can't feel. You can't see. That's essentially what Charavakas are. Now, if you look at Bauddha, they will add one more and then add Anumanam to it. And when we say Pratyaksham, there are two types of Pratyaksha. One is the physical Pratyaksha that we are talking about. Another one is the feelings, the mental or Alaukika Pratyaksha. Laukika, Alaukika Pratyaksha. So the Bauddhas accept Alaukika Pratyaksha also, because that's what will prove their meditation and all of those things. So they have that part. Charavakas don't have that. So this Pramanikam, they will accept these two and then say these two Pramanas are the only acceptable Pramanas. So for a Bauddha, for something to be Pramanikam, it has to follow only two Pramanas, Pratyaksha and Anumana. If you cannot prove it using these two, then it will be called Aparmanikam. Then if you look at Jaina, they will accept Shabda also, but Avaidika Shabda. They will not accept Vedas as the Shabda, Pramana. Their books will be accepted. So that is what Jaina Pramanas are. Jaina also accept Laukika Pratyaksha and Alaukika Pratyaksha. Now, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, which are the basis for your Ayurveda? They accept only these three. They will also accept Vaidika Pramana as the Shabda. Therefore, they are called Astika Darshanas. Now, Vedanta, Uttaramimamsa will accept all six Pramanas. Now, this is essentially the mapping, if you have. Now, our question is, how do I map this with the scientific traditions? So, if you have to do that, basically, this is what it comes to. The scientific inquiry is part of Pratyaksha, part of Anumana dependent on this, and part of Shabda dependent on this. So this is the portion that you can call it as a scientific one. Now if you look at which is the one that is closest to the scientific method, it will be the Jaina method of proving will be the closest to what we call as a scientific method. And I will not really go into all of these, it's more involved. So, but just tells you the whole gist of this thing is that science today is facing a crisis, especially in the area of neurophenomenology, consciousness studies, because there the first person inquiry is required. You cannot get away from that. And therefore they are trying to do things there, but then they are also linking it back to the third person inquiry. It's like a jugaad kar rahe hain wo. Doesn't work. Because you cannot be dependent on third person inquiry for things like consciousness studies. So there is a recognition of that. Therefore, the whole idea when we talk about IKS and then say we want to prove everything to be scientific, it's a futile search. You cannot prove. What is scientific is a subset of what we call as IKS Pramanika Shastra. But scientific will not fit the bigger one, because it's like trying to fit a mosquito inside, a elephant inside a mosquito's mouth. Won't work. But you can definitely fit a mosquito inside an elephant. So IKS and scientific the methods are like that. So it's only a subset of IKS, what we call as. But then we can investigate scientific method for fields like yoga, Sankhya, Ayurveda, agriculture, linguistics, Nyaya, which is most of the stuff that we deal with. Except for the Adhyatmika stuff, you can actually use scientific method for most of the things. But we have to be aware of what we are trying to do. And there is, as I said, increasing recognition that this positivist and objectivist perspective is not adequate. We need additional this thing from the first person perspective. There is another akshepa that is made for the Indian knowledge systems that it may not be rigorous. So I want to show you a few examples, not from recent literature, but some of the oldest texts of IKS. For example, it says in Charaka Samhita, which is at least 2,500 years old, it says, Purvam aptopadesha jnanam tataha pratyaksha anumanabhyam parikshopapadyate. Verify by observation and inference what you have studied in the text. And then look at the other one. Pratyaksha purvam trividham trikalam chanumiyate. So there is this cause and effect relationships. It can be retrospective, prospective and concurrent. It talks about concurrency in time, basically retrospective and prospective effects. There is also a thing about the space as well. So you can see how they are talking about spatial and temporal correlations, and not just one type of correlation. And then this is my favorite. It says, Vina tarkena ya siddhir yadurchaya siddhireva sa. If your success, if you have given it talks to a Vaidya and then says if you have given a medicine to a patient and that patient is cured, but you don't know why that fellow was cured, then your medicine is a random effect. You can't say that is the medicine because you don't know how it worked. So, clinical success not backed by evidence is to be dismissed as a chance or a random effect. And correlation is not causation. So these are the kind of things that you see in some of our very old texts. Now, it's very important that when we talk about Indian knowledge systems, people think that we need Sanskritam for it. Because we need Sanskrit for it, only Sanskrit scholars can interpret. But again, it is a necessary condition but not a sufficient condition. I want to show this in this context. If you look at this thing, bhakto guna shuddhyati yena tena labdhya cha gunyo gunita phalam va. If you just know a little bit of Sanskrit, you will translate it as bhaktaha, only Sanskrit. Then you will say bhaktaha means bhakta hai, gun hai, bhakton ke gun hai, और शुद्ध्यति शुद्ध होता है, ये न तेन लब्ध्या, उससे उसको फल मिलता है ना? भक्त के गुण से वो शुद्ध होकर उसको उसका फल मिलता है, किसका? भक्ति का. But that's nonsense here, because this occurs in Leelavati, which is a mathematical text. Bhaktaha there means divisor. Gunaha means multiplication. It's a technical term in maths. गुणकार करते हैं ना, हिंदी में भी होता है ना, गुणकार करना है. That's गुणकार is multiplication. Guna is that. Labdhya is a what you get, the term that you get. So they are saying about you divide this by that, you will get this. It's a multiplication of numbers. Clever way of multiplying large numbers. I mean, think about it. Now, I'll give you another example. Very often, because we don't know what they are talking about, we'll dismiss this as some kind of a mumbo jumbo. This is a classic example from Krishi Parashara. They will tell you that, okay, take the Shaka year, multiply it by 3, add 2, divide by 7. आपको वो साल का राजा मिलेगा. One of the 7 grahas, Surya, Chandra, Mangala, Buddha, Brahaspati, Shukra, Shani. And if वो सूर्य राजा होगा तो scanty और average rainfall होगा. Chandra होगा तो heavy rainfall है, so on and so forth. Now you look at this and tell me, what do you think about this? If you just look at this, you will say, क्या बात कर रहा है ये? राजा कौन होता है? क्या सूर्य राजा बन गया तो इतना कम rain आएगा और चंद्र राजा बन गया तो heavy rainfall? What is this nonsense they are talking about, right? Because we don't know what is happening there. Now I'll tell you what is happening. Because these are all empirical relationships that they have developed. What is really the whole idea? The crux is here, okay? Crux is here. They take the Shaka year, multiply it by 3. So let's say Shaka year is X. 3 into X plus 2. Divide by 7 and you get the remainder. Right? And find the remainder. So what is the operation that they are doing? A modulo 7 operation. Right? So modulo 7, right? That's what you're trying to do. Dividing it by 7 and finding the remainder. You're doing some things here to adjust some scale to something. But essentially it's a 7. Modulo 7. Now, if you look at Indian monsoons, there is a 7-year cycle. This is related to that. And 7 years is not the only cycle. There is a 5-year cycle. There is a 12-year cycle, 18.5-year cycle, 27-year cycle, and a 60-year cycle. How do you find that? You take the data of monsoon rainfall, maybe for 50, 60 years, do what we call a spectral decomposition of the data, and then you figure out where the peaks are. You'll see there is a peak at 2.84 years. There is a peak at 6.9 years. There is a peak at somewhere around 12.1 or 11.9, I don't remember that. There is one at 27, there is one at 60. These are actual data published from a peer-reviewed paper in 1994 in Current Science. Actual analysis of 60 years of Indian monsoon data by Dr. Rangarajan. And there you are actually finding all of these things. And then similarly, there is another method in Chanakya's Arthashastra. वो बोलते हैं कि अगर आप शुक्र ग्रह को सूर्योदय के समय या सूर्यास्त के समय देखे होंगे तो उस साल बारिश अच्छा होगा. Now you'll say why? That phenomena happens every 3 years. So there is a 3-year cycle. That 2.84-year cycle I was talking about matches very closely with that. Now you see, we have to understand so many things to be able to get to this point. Otherwise we'll dismiss this as some kind of mumbo jumbo. When I say this, please note, मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ आप लोगों को कि शनि 8 में होगा तो इतना दान करना पड़ेगा, ये सब वो सब नहीं है. फल ज्योतिष भारतीय नहीं है. I'll say this very very responsibly. फल ज्योतिष भारतीय नहीं है. Nowhere, I will challenge you all. Find me one sentence from Vedanga Jyotisha where they will say कि यहाँ पे ये ग्रह होगा तो उसका फल ये होगा. एक नहीं है, एक सेंटेंस नहीं है कहीं. Entire Vedanga Jyotisha. It talks about observations, it talks about modeling, it talks about things like these. It does not talk about ये दान दे दो तो हो जाएगा, वो सब नहीं है. We are not that kind of a fatalistic civilization. We are a civilization which talks about Purushartha and Daiva Bala, both as two wings of a bird. Purushartha is the effort that we put in and Daiva Bala is the environment. वो भी तो होना चाहिए ना. That essentially is what it is. Okay. Methods evolve, keep evolving with times. So, for example, these are the methods that Ayurveda uses for studying the bhasmas. वारितारा निश्चंद्रत्वम, थोड़ा सा उसको इधर डाल के देखते हैं पानी में फ्लोट हो रहा है कि नहीं, basically based on the surface tension, all of that stuff. Now you can use scanning electron microscope, XDS, XRD, TEM, सब यूज कर सकते हैं, Raman spectroscopy. We can use all of these and we should. Now दृष्टि आप देख रहे हो ना ये. So if I have to look at it and then say look at it from a biochemistry drishti, what will you see? I'll see carbohydrates, I'll see fats, I'll see proteins, right? I'll see salt, I'll see minerals. That's what my drishti will be, biochemistry view. Now I'll say, okay, अब आयुर्वेद की दृष्टि से देखो. Then you will say षड्रस है, तीखा है, मीठा है, नमकीन है, सब है. Then वीर्य, विपाक, स्वभाव, ये सब है. Because see that as good as this is, as objective as this is, this will not tell you why I like jalebi more than some other thing maybe. Right? That's my personal preference. वो नहीं बताएगा आपको. So you have to have a different perspective. See, you can look at the same thing, measure it objectively, but still you can have a very different perspective. That drishti is the difference. Now, think about something as cuttingly commercial as intellectual property rights. Now we talk about patenting cells, patenting everything under the sun. What was the model of Bharat? If you look at it, knowledge that is related to the universal good, like basic education, basic medicine, all of that was free for all qualified people. You had to qualify, then it will be free for you. And then the practitioners were actually supported by the society and it was forbidden to sell that knowledge. Guru dakshina hota tha, guru fees nahi hota tha. And if you look at all of these. And then where there is discretionary thing, like the Aranmula mirrors of Kerala, Meenakari work from Lucknow, or those very fine saris from Bengal, or what do you think, whatever you know, Muradabad ka metal work, that is discretionary. So that is protected. That knowledge is not for free. And people were encouraged to sell it for profit. Nobody was asked to say ki daan de do. No, you have to sell it for profit. And then use those profits to share and support everybody else. But then there are things like food. अब एक किसान को जाके बोलूंगा food is a universal need, you share it. That's not right. So what is the model that we had? We said, Kisan is not the end consumer of that food. So he can sell. But if I buy it for my consumption in my home, मुझे अतिथि वो भवा करना पड़ेगा और जो आता है उनको पहले खिलाना पड़ेगा. If I'm the end consumer. See that nuance there? Same thing with music. सुनने को तो सबको अधिकार है, सब सुन सकते हो. सिखाने के लिए तो मैं अपने घराने वाले को सिखाऊंगा. Right? This is how the music works. घराना scheme because of that. सब सुन सकते हैं. And then we have the concept of spardhaya vardhate vidya. You have to compete. ऐसे नहीं तो विद्या बढ़ता नहीं है कभी. You are the competitive society, but had a nuanced understanding of what intellectual properties are. And then, so think about this. Do we not need these kind of models for this world? Because if you look at healthcare, medicines are like really expensive. In India, we're fortunate. If you look into other countries, it's just out of hand. How do we deal with those things? And then now, one of the biggest challenges you will face is, how do I know what is right? Because in this WhatsApp world, anything can be put up anywhere by anybody. So, first thing is to identify a primary source, consult an expert, then you can identify multiple sources, and when you have multiple independent sources, you can say that it is an authentic thing. There are various types of text. I'll not get into that now. And you have to be careful what kind of a text are you looking at, and then what information are you looking for. So for example, Ayurveda to sabko malum hai, this is agriculture. I just want to show you. 2,500 years ago, Krishi Parashara, 800 years ago, Kashyapiya Krishi Sukti. Between that is Varah Mihira's Brihad Samhita. 12th century, Manasollasa, Vishwavallabha in 15th, 16th century, then Nuskadar Fanni Falahit in 17th century, Krishi Gita in Malayalam in 18th century. You see that entire texts that are building one on top of other. That is a knowledge tradition. That is a knowledge system, which has systemized the knowledge that is existing. Please.
Krishi Parashara and Parashara Jyotish, both are different.
Krishi Parashara and
Parashara Jyotish.
Parashara Jyotish, see, the thing is, it could be written by two different people. It is not necessary that it is written by one person. Primarily because one of the traditions that we have in Bharat is that we don't identify ourselves with the work. Because nobody says, I have developed this. It is all Guruon ki kripa thi bolte hain. There, many of the students who may have studied from a guru who came from the Parashara lineage will say, Parashar Muni ka ye hai. हाँ हाँ परंपरा बन गई ना, तो क्या करते हैं वो, अभी देखिए, देयर आर टेक्स्ट वेयर दे विल से शिव जी ने पार्वती को ये बताया. बहुत सारे टेक्स्ट में ऐसे शुरू होता है. भैरव तंत्र में, भैरव तंत्र इज ए रीसेंट टेक्स्ट, लास्ट 1000 years. उसमें शिव जी ने पार्वती को बताया ये कैसे लिखा उन लोगों ने. That is the style of writing the text. That is also the style of actually giving the authorship. So we have to be very careful. Parashara Jyotish और Krishi Parashara जरूरी नहीं है कि वो दोनों एक ही हों. Just to give you.
Actually वो tradition है जो Parashara.
Tradition का होगा, क्योंकि कृषि गीता का एग्जाम्पल मैंने बोला था ना कि कृषि गीता कहीं है. हाँ, ये बोलते हैं कि परशुराम ने लिखा है, परशुराम जी ने लिखा है. वो कैसे लिखेंगे 17th century में? ये एक्चुअली 17th century का टेक्स्ट है, मलयालम में है, क्योंकि वो वहां का लीनियज है. बस.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
So we have to be very careful with that kind of a thing. And I'll end in another 10 minutes or so. Indian knowledge systems is also something that is very innovative. So I want you to look at this. You all can actually go for that. No, I want to thank you. So, Nangavachansa Shunyani Sankhya Katapayadaya Mishretu Pantyala Sankhya Nachachintyo Halaswara. This occurs in Sadratnamala in 17th century, Shankara Varma. So, Kakha Gaghanga, Cha Cha Jajhanga, Tata Dadhana, Tata Dadhana, Papa Babhama, Yaralava, Shasha Sahala. Right? So, Katapaya is one. Therefore, it's called Katapayadi system. Katapara is two. So on and so forth. So now, basically, and then ach is 0. That means ka, ka, ki, sab hoga to 1 ही है वो. उसी तरह से ta, ta, ti, ti, सब कुछ 6 ही होगा. That's what this means. Now think about it. Vacha. Word vacha. Va is 4. Cha is 6. So when we say 4, that comes Ankanam Vamadogati. In the Indian way, we always specify the lowest decimal place, the number system, in the number system, lowest one first and then the highest one last. So 4 belongs to the units place. 6 belongs to tens place. Therefore, it will be 64. So if I say Vachami, Va is 4 units place, Cha is 6. Ma is 5. So it is 564. 4 in units place, 6 in tens place, 5 in hundreds place. Vachami. So Abhirama, A will be 0 in units place. Bhi is 4, Ra, Ma, 5240. That's how this number is, right? Everybody gets it? No? Vacha. So where is Va? 4. No, I'm just saying it is a way of coding numbers into words. Numbers. So 64 is Vacha. Right? 64. Number 64, I can say is equivalent to Vacha. If I use this system. Agreed? That you get right? So basically this is a way of coding the numbers into words. Alright? Now, I mean, Shyama means Sha is ignored, Yama is 51. Again? Code like that. Now you may say, why is this useful? Look at this shloka. Gopi bhagya madhuvrata shrungish shodadis sandhigha khalajivita khatava galahala rasandara. If you know a little bit of Sanskrit, this is about Krishna dancing on that snake. But Katapayadi system, let us decode this. Ga, go. Ga kya hai? 3. P, pa. Bha. Bha. 3, 1, 4. Gya, ignore ga and ya. Right? Ma. Bhogi, gopi, bhagya, ma. 5. Dha. Vra, va. Va, ra. Ta. 6. 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9, 2, 6. Pi up to 32 digits. See that? You can code. So, आपको एक श्लोक आ गया, तो pi up to 32 digits आ गया. Please. The point is something that you need to know intuitively. That is not coded. You'll just get the digits. So you need to understand when you are talking about the number, is it in thousands, 10,000s or whatever. None, what is it?
Number Ashini is the conversion of Om.
By 7 is an approximation. This is up to 32 digits. So they have used, yes please. Because there, see that's why it's not visible here. I'll just show. It's not visible. I say that this does not follow Ankanam Vamato Gatihi. This follows Ankanam Vamato Gatihi. So you have to read it from here. Ga. Ga is 3. Yeah, 3. See, this one does not follow the Ankana Bhava. This one does. So, E, 3, 1, 4. This way. Make sense? Next. Yeah, you had. Oh, where? You apply that in a lot of astronomical texts where you want to deal with numbers. If I have to describe the number of days that Jupiter takes to go around the sun, right? It's called. There are actually three types of numbers. Okay, there are three types of such coding systems. The very first one is basically described in Aryabhatta, and by Aryabhatta in his Aryabhattiyam. So that's his own system. He uses it for very large numbers. You'll see sign difference tables as Makhi, Bakhi, Fakhi, and all of that stuff. So that's all sign difference tables. That's how it forms. And this is the Kattapayadi system, which is a second type of system. The third one is called Bhut Sankhya, where, for example, if I say Nayanam, Aankh 2 hai, so Nayanam is 2. Surya 1, Chandra 1, Shara बाण 5 है, मनमद के 5 बाण थे ना, इसलिए पर्वत 7, because there are 7 पर्वत malas in our Bharat. Samudra 7, things like that. So it goes. So yeah, that is a different type of a coding system. This is another one. They all use these things to code the astronomical numbers. If you want to, basically आपको ना एक श्लोक में आपको बताना है कि कितना weight से आपका रेसिपी है, मान लीजिए मेटलर्जी में कोई alloy बना रहे हैं, and you have to have so much components of these elements, metals. How do you add? उसको उतना 3.4 श्लोक में तो नहीं बोल सकते ना, तो ये यूज करते हैं. और ये एक सिस्टम है जिसमें आपने देखा होगा कि अच जो है स्वर, उसका वैल्यू नहीं है. तमिलनाडु में एक सिस्टम है जिसमें स्वर का वैल्यू है, बाकी का नहीं है. उसमें का की will have different value from का की based on आ ई का, but क ख ग घ सबका एक ही वैल्यू है. They will tell you, no, वचा वाचा का नहीं होगा ना वहां पे. वाचा वचा दो अलग अलग नंबर है, इसमें वचा वाचा सेम नंबर है, right? So that's how these are used in multiple places, and वो बता देते हैं. Yes, please. Yeah. What kind of research are you doing?
Sir, we are from technology background.
Which background?
Electrical engineering.
Okay. Which specifically area in electrical engineering?
Sensor technology.
Sensor technology. Sensor technology, see, I don't know much about where you can integrate it within the sensor technologies per se, but let's say you are working on some kind of algorithms or something like that. There are actually people who are working on using some of the mathematics from the Kerala School of Mathematics for getting faster convergence of sign series. For example, the algorithms that we use today are actually slower compared to the method that was described in Nilakanta Somayaji's work. That is faster by 40%. There is a paper published from IIT BHU on this one, IKS division project. So you can see there are areas where, and then so if you are going to design a chip, they will actually use these kind of principles to do that. So for faster convergence and things like that. There is some, but then if you are developing some sensors, I don't know, not everything will be relatable to this. So there could be areas that you will not have any one-to-one convergence. But the whole point is, see, methods can change, but then the whole idea of drishti is something that you'll have to be integrated in the way sense that you need to think about what is the purpose of that and all that stuff maybe. But as such, within the sensor technology is not much. That's why I asked you specifically which area.
Sir, if we want to integrate in the modern higher education system, then how can we integrate?
We use it in many places. For example, so let me give you something that is very that may not seem to be a very good fit for Indian knowledge systems at the first sight. For example, let's say computer science, in compiler design. You may say, why am I going to use Indian knowledge systems there? If you look at the Pandini's Ashtadhyayi structure, it's a very good example of a self-contained system. That's what you need for a compiler, a self-contained system of instructions. So that's what, with very few exceptions. In fact, that's one of the best examples of a good compiler. So now there is another thing called automatic theorem proving that we do in mathematics. So Panchavayavaya that I talked about is a very good model for doing the automatic theorem proving. These are all very useful for your, even in those kind of research there. And metallurgy and all, you have smart materials development, agriculture, there are tons of things. We do a lot of stuff ourselves in our lab here. And then if you talk about, just think about treating dyslexic children with Sanskrit. You may say, what is the relationship? You can sit down, relax. The Sanskrit pronunciation is very, very scientific in the way that it is designed. It's actually very systematically designed. I will not just use the word scientific, I'll say very systematically designed. And when you actually notice where the ka, kha, ga, gha comes from, we have these things, right? Kanthavya, talavya, oshtya. All of those things are actually where your tongue hits or the air is pressed. And because it's so structured, people with stuttering and stammering, that can be addressed very easily by reciting few shlokas that have to be carefully be selected so that you practice those points where you are facing the stuttering and stammering. This is actually being used in therapy. For dyslexic children and autistic children, we are using what is called as artitudo. So in dance you hear these things, right? Ta, takita, takita, takita and all that sound they make. That is actually a rhythmic pattern that they make. So they are using those to encode things so that they actually can learn patterns, and from then that dyslexia can be cured. Similarly, they are using basically these patterns and also the meters, the Chanda Shastra. So for example, we have the Anushtup Chanda, Trishtup Chanda. There are all these. Doha ka ek style hota hai, Shlok ka ek style hota hai, and the way that you pronounce them and way that you sing them is different. Dandakam ka alag style hota hai. People are actually working with these, with children. And in NIMHANS and in ISC Bengaluru, we have projects going on where actually they are treating children with these. It's not a theoretical thing, it's actually being applied. There are many, many areas. I mean, there is one project going on in FLU, of all places, English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad, where they are taking what is called as a Spota theory of Bhartrhari from 10th century. Spota theory is how do you make meaning of a sentence. So the Spota theory says it explodes, the meaning explodes. So Rama killed Ravana. You can take a longer sentence. Let's say you take this small sentence, Rama. You won't understand anything. You don't get the meaning. Rama, I say killed. Rama killed. Okay, what? Who? Ravana. Then that meaning explodes. So that's called a spota. There are artha spota, there are different types of spota. So they are using this, where? For making digital advertisement posters. So you see, how can you make meaning? Yeah.
IIT बॉम्बे शायद इन्वॉल्व है, ऐसा मेरा पिछली बार जब वहाँ भोपाल में एक संगोष्ठी ऑर्गेनाइज हुई थी उसमें पता लगा था. तो सर ये स्टैंडर्ड तय हो जाएंगे तो क्या ABDC और इस तरीके के जो जर्नल्स हैं उनसे हमको मुक्ति मिलेगी?
वो तो पता नहीं है, लेकिन अब क्या बताएं. Journals तो हैं अभी IKS में
Yes,
हैं,
sir,
launch किए
yes,
हैं.
sir.
But
Yes,
then see,
sir.
the whole idea is we need a different paradigm of thinking. Otherwise, it's not possible to solve the existential problems that we are facing, because that is why I started with those problems. Because you see, the challenge is, Einstein भी बोलते हैं ना कि if you do the same thing repeatedly and expect different result, it is called madness, right? If we are going to use the same thinking that brought us to this problems of this world and try to solve it using the same thought process, it's not going to solve it. You need a different perspective, and that's why the IKS perspective is so valuable. Not for any other reason than that, even if not for any other reason. So,
Hello, sir.
yeah, please.
Actually, my question is, I just want your insight related to the things. Like in today's life, we are dealing with the Gen Z students, isn't it, in academics? So it is very difficult for the tech students to correlate, inculcate with the IKS model, because we are only having a story and the proofs related to demonstrate them. So, matlab, could you share some points related
I'm
to?
actually more hopeful of Gen Z than the current our crop of. I'm
Because
sorry,
it's-
but that's what I see because I
Because it's-
travel all across. There is more hope in the youngsters. That's why I'm in this job. Otherwise, अगर उनमें hope नहीं होता तो मैं बंद करके IIT में बैठ जाता. I see more hope there than in the faculty and older generation. Our minds are actually ossified. They think more. I'm telling you, the kind of things that, see, they will ask questions. The reason why they go away is because we are not able to answer their questions most of the time. We are not prepared. You go and engage them, and I'm telling you, you'll see a sea of a difference. And honestly, we have to say sometimes, if we don't know something, I don't know something. That's kind of intellectual honesty is required. And when that is there, they engage. And the kids actually engage quite deeply. I see, अभी मेरे पास 10-15 बच्चे ऐसे हैं जो कभी बात करते रहते हैं. Who have left everything and then they have started their own startups because they want to tell stories. अब सोचिए ना, हम लोग मैनेजमेंट में पंचतंत्र की कहानियां कितने लोग पढ़ाते हैं? कोई नहीं पढ़ाता. इतनी सारे कहानियां हैं उसमें. एंड दे आर नॉट, पंचतंत्र की कहानियां हम लोगों ने बच्चों तक सीमित कर दिया और बोला कि एक कार्टून में अमर चित्रकथा का आएगा, बस हो गया. बट दैट इज नॉट द पर्पस ऑफ द पंचतंत्र. पंचतंत्र किसने किसको बोला था? If you look at the preface of Panchatantra, it is told by a scholar, Vishnu Sharma, जो 84 years का old scholar थे. राजा उनको बुला के बोलते हैं, राजा बहुत कोशिश करते हैं अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाने का. They are also disengaged. They don't want to study in the classes. तो फिर वो बोलते हैं, अरे ऐसे बच्चे रह के क्या फायदा? अभी if I have to give my kingdom to these fellows, they will spoil it. उससे अच्छा होता कि बच्चे नहीं होते. ये इतना बात बोलते हैं. वो बोलते हैं कोई है क्या, मैं आधा राज्य दे दूंगा. तो कोई नहीं मिलता है. तो उनको फिर कोई बोलता है विष्णु शर्मा जी हैं, उनको बुलाते हैं. तो विष्णु शर्मा जी आते हैं, तो उनको बोलते हैं मैं आपको आधा राज्य दे दूंगा. तो मालूम है वो क्या बोलते हैं? तुम्हारा आधा राज्य मुझे कुछ नहीं चाहिए, पैसे के लिए नहीं आया यहाँ पे मैं. दैट्स द, वो अकड़ होनी चाहिए एक स्कॉलर में. पैसे के लिए काम नहीं करेंगे हम. आके वो बोलता है तुम्हारे पास होगा 2 साल, मेरे पास नहीं है, मैं बूढ़ा हूं, मर जाऊंगा 6 महीने में. तो मैं 6 महीने में सिखाऊंगा इनको और ऐसे बनाऊंगा कि इंद्र भी इनको हरा नहीं पाएगा. एंड ही टीचेस द स्टोरीज. एक एक स्टोरी में द काइंड ऑफ स्ट्रैटेजीज दैट दे टॉक अबाउट, इट्स ऑल अबाउट पॉलिटिक्स, इट्स अबाउट स्ट्रेट क्राफ्ट. हाउ डू यू डील विद एनिमीज, हाउ डू यू डील विद योर फ्रेंड्स, हाउ डू यू स्ट्रैटेजाइज. दैट्स द स्टोरी. एंड how do you take care of your basically, एक छोटा सा कहानी बताता हूँ. I don't know whether I'm exceeding my time. Can I take 5 minutes to tell you some पंचतंत्र story? Right? So एक पंचतंत्र में एक story है. एक शेर, lion, right? राजा है. And उसका मंत्री है एक jackal, लोमड़ी. ठीक है? So what happens is अकाल पड़ जाता है बहुत ज़्यादा. तो सब भाग जाते हैं, सब जानवर तो चले जाएंगे अकाल पड़ गया तो. सो देर आर नो डियर, देर आर नो रैबिट्स, नथिंग इज देयर. सो द लायन एंड दिस जैकल आर वेरी वेरी हंग्री. बहुत भूख लग रही है इन लोगों को, कुछ नहीं मिल रहा है, बहुत दिन हो गए. देन बैठते हैं, बोलते हैं महाराज क्या करेंगे, कुछ नहीं हो सकता अभी, कुछ तो खाना पड़ेगा, आपको हंट करना पड़ेगा. बोलते अरे क्या करूँगा, कुछ मिल नहीं रहा है, देखो तो सही. तो ये देखता है, बोलता है महाराज एक मैं आपको आइडिया बताता हूँ. तो फिर ये लोग जाते रहते हैं, तो एक पूरा नदी मिलता है, डीप रिवर. आई मीन सूख, अकाल पड़ गया तो वो भी सूख गया है पूरा, लेकिन उस तरफ जो है ह्यूमन सेटलमेंट्स है, लोग, गांव है, वहां पे लोग हैं. तो वहां पे देखते हैं कि कुछ गधे जो हैं चर रहे हैं. वो धोबी आते हैं ना, धोबी घाट था उधर उस तरफ, तो वहां पे कुछ गधे दिख रहे हैं. तो ये देखता है, ये लोमड़ी बोलता है महाराज एक काम करता हूँ, हम लोग वो गधे को मार देते हैं, खा लेते हैं. तो बोलता है उसको, लेकिन वहाँ जाएंगे तो वो हमको मार देंगे, लोग हैं वहाँ पे. तो बोलता है मैं एक तरीका निकालूंगा, गधा को यहाँ लाऊंगा. लाएगा यहाँ पे? बोलता है हाँ लाऊंगा. तो बोलता है ठीक है. बोलता है मैं, आप यहाँ चुपचाप रहिए, एक थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे पत्थरों के पीछे रहिए, जैसे ही गधा आएगा उसको मार दीजिए, फिर हम लोग खा लेंगे. बोला ठीक है. ये जाता है, चुपचाप जाता है, पानी नहीं है ना ज़्यादा, तो चल चल के चला जाता है इधर उधर. देन वहाँ पे एक गधा मिलता है इसको, and it's a male donkey.
And then tells that fellow, why are you eating this grass here? There is better grass on that side. Grass is greener there. बोलता है यही अच्छा है. बोलता है तुमको मालूम ही नहीं है और तुम यहाँ पे यही खा के ऐसे रहो. ये वो करके पट्टी पड़ा देता है. बोलता है चलो चलो चलता हूँ, जाके देखते हैं, चलो. एंड देन वॉक्स. लोमड़ी जा रहा है, पीछे पीछे गधा जा रहा है. तो वॉक क्रॉस द रिवर. थोड़ा आगे जाता है, पत्थर दिखता है. पत्थर के पास शेर पीछे बैठा हुआ है. ठीक है. तो जैसे गया वो झपकी मार दिया. देन ही जंप्स. जैसे वो जंप मारता है तो थोड़ा जल्दी, भूख है ना थोड़ा सा, सो जल्दी जंप करता है. एंड दिस फेलो लुक्स एट दैट एंड देन गेट्स फ्राइटेंड एंड रन्स बैक एट लाइक 100 किलोमीटर पर आवर स्पीड से भाग भाग के इधर आ जाता है. देन ये बोलते, लोमड़ी बोलता है क्या किया तुमने? मैंने बोला था रुको, उसको अभी भगा दिया. अभी बोलता है अब तो गए हम लोग, अभी तो कुछ नहीं हो सकता, चलो करके बोलते हैं. तो बोलता है नहीं 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 ऐसा नहीं है, आई विल टेल यू समथिंग, यू वेट, आई विल ट्राई अगेन. तो वो फिर थोड़ी आएगा, वो तो नहीं आएगा. बोलता मैं कन्विंस करता हूँ ना उसको, लेकिन इस बार गलती नहीं करना है. बोलता ठीक है ठीक है. फिर जाता है, जाके फिर वो गधे के पास जाता है. गधा वहीं पे है. बोलता क्या बोला था वहां पे, कुछ तो भी आ गया था, ये वो करके. Then he says, you are the most मूर्ख donkey in the world. बोलता क्या हो गया? Do you know what they were? बोलता क्या था? They were all female donkeys waiting for you. And they were waiting for you so that you all could eat grass and then live happily ever after. And you are a fool to have run back like this. So he says, नहीं नहीं नहीं, ये फिर चलो करके फिर चलता है. ठीक है. Now grass and female donkeys. So comes. इस बार lion does not make a mistake. Jumps and kills the donkey. But lion, तो lion है. He says, let me take a bath and then come. And then asks the jackal to take care of this, उसको देखभाल करने के लिए, to protect this, to see this, take care of this. But then छोटा animal है, भूखा है, so it wants to, it's feeling very hungry. ये कभी आ नहीं रहा है, गया है वहाँ नहाने के लिए, तो उसका कान खा लेता है donkey का. So then this guy comes and then sees donkey के कान नहीं है. Immediately gets very angry, gets angry. Says, you traitor, तुमने झूठा खाया और मैं झूठा खाऊंगा, तुमको मार दूंगा. So then this fellow is very, shivers. And he says, no, महाराज एक बात सुनिए. नदी के उस पार वाले गधों में के कान नहीं होते. आप मुझ पर ऐसे ही गुस्सा कर रहे हैं. बोलते सच में? बोलते हाँ सच में. ठीक है चलो करके खा लेते हैं ये लोग. ठीक है. And then that's the end of the story. Now, can the jackal, Lomdi, ever become a lion? Can that take place of lion? Can lion take the place of jackal? Right? No. So who is the lion here in a company? A CEO. Who is this jackal? Master strategist in the company. Right? You see, there are some people who want to work behind the scenes. They don't want to be the limelight. And there are some action-oriented people, but they need some good direction. Now think about it. Another thing. When you have a resource crunch in your company, right? Who do you pay first? The clerks or the CEO? Leaders eat last. Book था ना? The CEOs get paid last. Why? देखिए, you may be a CEO or somebody getting few lakhs per month. वो जो मेरा क्लर्क है ना, उसका 30,000 है सैलरी. वो उसको EMI भरना है. मैं उसको सैलरी टाइम पे नहीं दूंगा. That fellow will eat the कान. कान खाएगा गधे का. Corruption होगा. You want to keep the company running properly, make sure you take care of your lowest cadre of employees first. Make sure you treat them well. Then आपका company में ठीक रहेगा. These are all the management lessons that you can learn from this small story. Think about it. Is this now, think about this, is this something I teach to 3-year, 4-year-olds? Yes, maybe. I can also teach this in a management class. This is the pedagogy of IKS. Right? So, anyway. So the whole idea is you all should be telling these stories. You all should be doing this in your classes. That's when I'll be happy. Because how can you contribute? That's the whole point. So there are these, basically, this way, I don't know why this is coming like this. Okay. Okay, it's only half of the thing. Let me make it smaller, I guess. Make it smaller, please, I think. Yeah. I think that's it. No. Increase it a little bit. Increase more. Fit होगा वो fit कर देंगे. That's enough. No, no. Yeah. Okay. So the whole idea of this mapping there, was that, yeah, but it's coming like this, half. We don't have that many slides, we'll just do it. Yeah, it's okay, I think it's okay. It's okay, we'll make it work. So whenever you want to try to integrate the IKS, please think about these 2 points. IKS should be aspirational and it should focus on holistic development. And everything that goes in between, whether it is talking about faculty development or all of that stuff, we can do. Provide opportunities for learning outside the classroom, research opportunities integrated with the traditional learning pathways, all of that. And then this is a shloka from Nilakanta's commentary on Mahabharata. It says, Acharyat padamadatte padam shishya swamedhaya padam sa brahmacharibhya padam karak kramena cha. What we can teach in the class is only 1/4 of the knowledge. Acharya padamadatte. We can only give a 1/4. Padam shishya swamedhaya. 1/4 the shishya or the student acquires by own self-study. Padam sa brahmacharibhya. 1/4 by interacting with their peers, so peer-to-peer learning. Padam karak kramena cha. What we call as experiential learning today. That's essentially the peer-to-peer learning, self-study, lecturing in the class, and then experiential learning. All 4 types of learning in then one shloka. So the idea is to integrate all of these things. So there are many guidelines, so more for faculty colleagues here, that UGC says that there is 5% of credits have to be there in the undergraduate and postgraduate curriculums. There are more than 50 courses now that we are teaching, that are being taught in various institutions, and their syllabi are all posted on our website. You can go download them along with the references. You can also talk to the PIs and then see how, learn the best practices. So the whole idea of us posting it there is to make sure that we don't become the middleman. We don't want to be the middleman. You talk and then there are faculty trainings going on. This year, 10,000 faculty will be trained, and things are going on. Even now, 4 places in the country, we are having a week-long FDPs on this. In 14 specialized areas, there are going to be about 150 courses launched on Swayam by this June, next June, and all of them will be available for everybody. And many internship opportunities are available for students. If you are interested in IKS internships, they are paid internships where you'll get to work with some kind of a mentor who is expert in IKS. And if you are a head of institution, please do develop your institution as an international center of excellence in a particular subdomain. We cannot become IKS center of excellence in everything. We have to choose a particular domain and excel. Like, it's like you cannot have a Institute of Excellence in Science. It will always be one particular area, cellular and molecular biology maybe, something like that. So one particular area. And do recruit dedicated faculty, introduce these courses, incentivize transdisciplinary research, and then incentivize faculty for pursuing IKS research. And if you are a faculty, please study foundational materials in your own domain. If you are a chemist, please study chemistry texts. If you are a management student, management faculty, please study management texts. Please study, because there, that is when you'll be able to leverage your 10 to 20 years of your domain knowledge that you have acquired with the knowledge, and you'll be able to make those connections much more easily than what I could or anybody can. You will be, because that's your area. And then do apply for research projects in collaborations with traditional scholars, prepare course materials, and then discuss. And the whole idea is to become Acharya and transition from being Shikshika to Acharya. And what do we do at IKS division? So we integrate basically all these pathways, right from school education to institutional excellence. We talk and have programs for every state there, and also for general public. And these are all some of the projects that are there. And my sincere advice to most of you who are just beginning in IKS is to not apply for research projects at this stage, because it will not get funded. Because the integration that is required and the level that is, the competitiveness of these proposals is extremely high. So we select less than 5% of the proposals. So that requires deep study and deep integration. See, I cannot become an expert in management by attending one class or 1 week of lectures. We have to study. Therefore, my sincere suggestion would be to study yourself and then apply for internship projects, where you actually get to interact with mentors and students, and then see these things, and then start small with some BTech projects or bachelor's or master's projects, and then go from there. Once you do that for a year or so, suddenly you will actually know more, and then you'll know exactly how to apply. Because the proposals are very competitive, and centers are really the last thing that you should really think about, because that requires a lot of capacity building. And then when we talk about centers, this year onwards, what we are basically encouraging, in fact last year onwards, what we are encouraging is that institutions should start their own centers first, perform for 1 year, apply to IKS division for a recognition. Then we'll support with some funding, and all of that thing will happen, but we want to see the track records first. And there are many, many opportunities, whether you're a faculty or a student or anybody. And then there are also a lot of fun videos and actual serious videos, more than 400 hours of videos on various disciplines. Please go to our website and you'll find all of that for free, along with the materials. We publish some more than 150 books from the IKS division, so that they are accessible to all ranges of learners. Please go, download them, study. The whole idea is, unless we study, we'll be translating as Bhakto Guna Shuddhyati Yena Tena Labdhya. Bhakton ke gun se pavitra hota hai, type translations will be there. We have to translate it properly and understand it properly. And my final thing is that please study, understand, and add to the traditional wisdom, because IKS, when we talk about it, is not a stagnant pool of knowledge limited to some texts that were written some 400 years ago or 1,000 years ago. This is a continuous living civilization. Therefore, this requires that kind of an input. And this is not history studies or limited to religious studies. What makes IKS unique is that Bharatiya Drishti, Sarpa, Rajju, and it is inherently disciplinary and multidisciplinary and holistic in its approach, and it manifests in various places. You see, Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat or Karikala Chola's Grand Anicut. Both of them are temples to water, really. And that's essentially the Bharatiya Drishti that is reflected in various ways, even among architectures as different as Rani Ki Vav and the Anicut. And then IKS is not a Nirasa Shastra. It is not something that is dry. It is full of fun, a lot of happiness, because IKS is about celebrating life to the fullest extent. There is this game, Bharatiya games Rajju Sarpa, which is, as you can probably recognize, snakes and ladders, but there are no ladders here. You see, there are only ropes. Rajju Sarpa, Nyaya of Upanishads, that's why it is there like that. But then, you see, can you move it a little bit? I'll just take few minutes to explain what this game is. It's a beautiful game. Just move this a little bit so that I want people to see. Oh, okay. Just slide it slowly. Okay. So, okay. Okay. Well. So this is 1 here, 9, and there are 8. 9, 8 is 72. 9 because body is considered to be a city with 9 gates, Navarandhras. And then 8, 7 chakras, and then the Vaikuntha on top. So this game starts here. And then when you add, basically throw 6, you start from here and then you continue. And you can see here that this game cannot end here, because it will always go down. So it ends only here, because what this is telling you is the Janma Chakra, Janma Mrityu Chakra. And then this 8 starts with Janma, and then 18 is Harsha. That is the first ashrama of Brahmacharya. Basically it ends with youthful energy of young chap of 18. Then basically next ashrama is Karma Yoga. We start with Karma Yoga with a sense of duty in the Grihastha ashrama towards our parents, towards our children, towards the society. And then what we end up is Spashta Chetana, or clarity of what life is about. Then starts the Vanaprastha. By that time we have finished all our responsibilities. We seek Jnana and should end in Bhakti. That will take us to Mukti. If it doesn't end here, if there is Ahankara, it will bring us down. And the progress towards Mukti cannot be through Ahankara. That is what the snake is telling you. So you can go like the Subuddhi. If someone has Durbuddhi, we cannot have Durbuddhi and hope to attain moksha. It will always come down. So on and so forth. And then you can see there is Susangati and Kusangati. Often in life it is difficult to distinguish between what is good friendship and bad friendship. And that requires viveka. And also the circumstances. That's why there is dice and also the thing. So there are many things like this in this game. So you can play. It's available in 8 languages. You can download it in Google Play. I'll also pass on some physical copies that we have, so you can pass it on. So this, and then my last slide. Thank you so much. Okay. Last one. Can you go down, please? Oh, well, that's okay. Just wanted to say thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. That's the last slide anyway. Oh, thank you. It's just looks like it doesn't want to go to the last slide. Will this work? Last slide नहीं जाएगा. I don't know. It's a computer. You can go to the PowerPoint. Go to the PowerPoint. I think that's easier for you. Just pick the last one and then we'll end there. Okay. So, okay, open the PowerPoint, please. Or that is also fine. Yeah, that's the same thing, because I was not sure that Sanskrit fonts will be properly rendered. That's what. Anyway, I just wanted to say what Mahamana says. So he says, Paap Deenata Dasata or Dasata Paap. Paap Deenata Daridrata or Dasata Paap. Prabhu Dije Swadhinata Mitaya Sakala Santap. This is the verse from Mahamana's Upadesha in BHU. So that was the slide. That was there. So basically the whole idea is when we talk about Vikasit Bharat, we are talking about developing our country. It is extremely important that we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat. We can't be dependent on the whims and fancies of Trump or somebody else. And we have to be dependent on our own thing. And when we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, the most important thing that we can think about, even in Atmanirbhar Bharat, is the Atmanirbharata of the intellect, Bauddhik Atmanirbharata, that we need to talk about. And that reclaiming that civilizational heritage and the thought process and the way that we used to think is very important if we want to really be free. And we talk about Vikasit Bharat. So that's where that thing ends. And I think that's okay. That's basically what it was. Thank you so much. I hope I was not too long and all that.
So before we conclude sir's session, anybody has any question for sir? You want to ask a question?
Please, go ahead.
How can IKS influence the entrepreneurial behavior?
What behavior?
Entrepreneurial behavior.
Oh, okay. I didn't talk about it because we had paucity of time. In fact, the entire way of looking at entrepreneurship, how should we really approach that? There is a Bharatiya way of looking at it, and that's basically anchored in 2 or 3. I'll just give you the terms. You can Google it and find out what you can find it. First is the concept of Shubhala. Second is the concept of Loka Sangraha. It's also called Ashtra Sangraha, Loka Sangraha also. What that means is the welfare of all. Something that you are striving as an entrepreneur for the welfare of all as well. So you want to work for your profit. That's where the Shubhala concept comes in. And Loka Sangraha, you want to work on things that are for the benefit of everyone. Then it also talks about the value of that kind of a go-getter spirit that you should have. You should not shy away from competition. Because that's something very important. So, but then you should also be considerate. That's the balance that is required. And that essentially comes again from the where you want to pursue a third path. That's the whole idea. So, there's a framework that's built around it, and you can think of that framework as a Loka Sangraha framework based on the Shubhalava concept. These are the 2 pillars of that. And you'll see very different way of entrepreneurship. In fact, you should also look into some of the merchant guilds that we had. So, for example, the 500 Aihola in Aihole in Karnataka, description of 500 Aihole families, which were actually the traders who used to trade. There is the Chettinad region in Tamil Nadu where they were really big. Even in Gurjara or Gujarat and Rajasthan, you have Marwadis and Agarwals who have their entire trade network even today. Think about it. Which country, which place in the world will you have businesses worth of lakhs of crores every year without anything being written? The entire Surat diamond industry runs like that. It just runs based on trust. And if you think about the way that the Patels have taken over the entire motel business in the US, it's a classic study of Indian entrepreneurship. If you look at how Tirupur and Coimbatore regions were developed by Indian, what do you call as desi, raw desi log jo kabhi MBA ke baad bhi nahi suna hai. How they developed that into 1 lakh crores worth of automotive business. And then Tirupur is one of the largest clusters of the world where you have garment exports. You know, 30% of those industries are funded by the, jo hum yahan pe Stri Dhan bolte hain na, they are funded by that. Not just the wife's jewelry, but also this fellow's sister forced her husband to invest. And they did that. There are 30% of the industries are like that in Tirupur region. Same thing you'll find in Chandigarh region, that Jalandhar, those regions.
Indian entrepreneurship is thriving. We should just look into it. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Sir, please have a seat. Please have a seat. Thank you very much, Murthy sir, for such an interesting session and for taking us back to our roots. And to formally propose a vote of thanks on behalf of IPS Academy Institute of Business Management and Research, Indore, may I now invite Dr. Pallavi Mukherjee ma'am here, please.
At the outset, Dr. Murthy, thank you so much for giving us this time today. As I could hear from my faculty colleagues just behind me, saying that, oh my God, sir is a celebrity, and sir is here. So I think he deserves a big, huge round of applause. Sir, you have been so kind and humble throughout our journey of conversations that we were planning this session for you. And you being a part of this FDP has created an entirely different, a massive, what should I say, an impact in this FDP. It is an eye-opening session for all of us. Do you all agree with me? We should all change the way we think, the way we teach, and the way we carry forward our knowledge to the students. So whatever sir said today, let us introspect in it. And again, we are very grateful for you to be here. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
And now, sir, we would like to present you a token of gratitude and remembrance on behalf of IPS Academy Institute of Business Management and Research, Indore. So for that, I invite Dr. Pallavi Mukherjee, ma'am, and me, the co-coordinator of this FDP. Now all the participants are invited for a group photograph with sir.